Any given Sunday, week 11 was pretty electric for not being electric. A lot of us were in the red, a lot of underperformances from big key players. A lot of people in the top 5 you wouldn't expect to be there. So what that meant was if you happened to start one of the people who were going off, you probably did okay. There was a lot of matchups where both teams were underpredicted and they're just grinding it out. A couple teams where that's not the case and they just kind of took it to us. And is going to have, I said us, you had given away how I felt on that one. It is going to have a huge implication on the standings, as we will get to. We'll talk about week 11. Then we'll get to us as a league. Week 11 was the weeks of the haves and the have-nots, and it didn't always actually balance to who you thought that was going to be. What I mean by that is you can look on the Yahoo League page. If you had one of the people who went off, you were in the green, and if you didn't, you were very much in the red, because those who did not hit really did not hit. Even with the games, they were kind of hit or miss. We did have our big Rams, Seattle. If you watched it, it was a little bit disappointing, but not a bad game. I mean, Benedict Darnold kind of threw it away for the Hawks, but even then, they kind of still had a chance if the Rams didn't have the MVP, and by that, the most valuable punter. For those watching, you know what I'm talking about. Pinning a team down that late kind of sealed the deal. And if we're talking about a punter in a game like that, I guess that's football, but that's not really fantasy football. So those were hit or miss even there. You are looking at, like we've talked about before, the NFC just seems to have a few more established teams. And if you have some of those guys, awesome. But even then, Eagles look pretty much unbeatable, or their defense looks pretty good again. But nobody wants an Eagle because they're just, like I said it last week, every time I watch the Eagles play, they make me hate football. It's not fun. And yet them and the Rams and possibly the Hawks look like the teams to beat if they stay healthy. So we'll see how that rolls. AFC, though, it was more of the same. You haven't had teams that just go up and down. There's a reason why Vegas still low-key likes that Ravens-Chiefs matchup. They're not looking great either, but they just assume that they might later, I guess. I mean, the Colts have been pretty consistent, obviously. But look at the team like the Bills. 2 weeks ago, looked horrible. Last week, looked dominant. And let's not beat around the bush. It jumps into week 12, but Thursday's already happened. And we know that roller coaster ride continues. I had some pushback and some people saying, what about us Chargers? Well, what about you? You had Herbert who threw 0 yards in the second half, even though the week before they looked just fine. So the AFC just seems like that kind of a up and down roller coaster, and you assume that whoever comes out of there is going to be fairly battle tested, whereas the NFC just seems to have a few more juggernauts. We'll see how that rolls. Even in these Ravens, though, if you're watching Lamar, he is not looking good. Realistically, there's some of these big teams that are making us fantasy owners really have to question. I don't even want to think about being an A.J. Brown owner. I've had him in the past, but not this year, luckily. And now it's like, do you start Michael Wilson over him? Like, maybe, right? Even though he's against Dallas, who you start everybody against Dallas. In a need to win week, I don't know that you do. I mean, it's kind of up to you. Lamar's another one. He is not looking healthy. And yet, would it shock you if he went out and had QB1 type performances? So it really doesn't give us a whole lot to play on. Because even in the AFC, the Ravens have not played well. But if they win this week and the Steelers lose, I believe they're tied for the AFC North title. And that's just kind of a dumpster fire and a mess. But going into week 12, because I think it's important to look forward at this point in the season, you're going to notice these get a little bit shorter. And actually, by our playoffs, I kind of cut them off because I think we just want to get to the action. But in week 12, you got Chiefs, Colts, you got Minnesota and Green Bay, you got Philly and Dallas, and you got Tampa Bay and the Rams. And then other than that, you got double-digit point spread. So coming into an essential week here, 12, most of us either need the win to make the playoffs, or if you're in it, you're really fighting for those 1 or 2 seeds because so many things can happen in that knockout week. You got Denver, who low-key is a fantasy team that, like, their guys get started even though they don't score points. Chargers, I just talked about them, not trying to bury the needle. You got Miami and Washington. Again, Washington not so much, but Miami, their big guys are being started. So with 3 weeks left, I don't envy any of us making those decisions. But before we get to 12, let's cover 11. Then we'll deal with the tough talks. One of the things you're going to hear a lot today, other than the things that I say constantly every week, is a lot of people were underpredicted. And in fact, it was kind of an epidemic that went up and down here. But obviously, as we can see, Jake was not one of those people. Not only was he probably the most active person at the trade deadline that you don't see on the trade schedule. We will talk about that maybe at a later date. but he was definitely the one who came out and dominated this week. Now, let's be honest, though, a couple big performances are what did it. The QB1 and wide receiver 3 led the charge. The fact that A.J. Brown actually got points, hey, good for him. That doesn't always happen. And even had some on his bench, considering the fact that it was a near commando week in terms of bye weeks, etc. Now, on the flip side of that coin, this actually could have been a pretty tight matchup if all things were considered. If we shift some people and don't have a 0 in our lineup, Mark Andrews was the tight end 4, pretty good there. But if we just, and Drake London got hurt, no shade on that one. But if we scroll down here, he had the tight end 3 in Wood. You had the quarterback 2 in Bryce Young. Man alive, those were some points on the bench. So aside from that, though, you just saw Jake was probably going to get outgunned no matter what. Unlucky that Thielen Breezy was at that point, but right now he's kind of, I don't know. I mean, he does know that to get first round pick, you got to win the consolation, or I should say the pick of what pick you want next year. You get first choice. These could be two teams that see each other later in that tournament, which I'm pretty interested in. Or is Jake going to poke through and make the postseason? Only time will tell. Speaking of that postseason, two teams that started off looking like they were going to go, and at the end of it, still there. So that's actually a pretty good sign. Huge week for Kevin here in House of Gibbs. I mean, obviously we can see here just the game difference. Top 2 means a lot. Getting that first round bye and getting all the way to the semis is going to be a big one. Now, how Gibbs did it? Actually, with a lot of quarterback work. He was the quarterback 3 and quarterback 5, and I would say Brissett and Fields, I don't know if people would have picked that one coming out of the gate. Running backs did quite fine, but not one of them scratched the top 5. It really was the quarterback dominance that helped push him over. Well, and the fact that V just fell flat on his face. He had Bijan Robinson here. He was obviously a top 5. He was the running back 4. But we have to scroll a little bit here. Yeah, there he is. Number 1 wide receiver on your bench, V. I don't know if that really shifts it for you. You were down by a lot, but as sure as poop couldn't have hurt. Definitely would have made this one a lot tighter, but unfortunately, you just had a lot of guys underperforming, and 2 quarterbacks in the top 5, can't mess with that. Another team where one's trying to make the playoffs, the other's trying to get one of those top spots, and Purdy ends up being probably one of the most interesting teams. In fact, maybe there's some collusion kind of go here. After this game, they decided to kind of maybe hang out for a second and talk about a deal, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. In Paul's case, Trey McBride was the tight end 1, as he sometimes tends to be, and defense 5 coming out of the gate. He also got an awesome performance by Mariota. The fact that he even hit the bar there, I would take it. Purdy was actually maybe the better play in terms of his name, but only by a couple points, and it sure didn't cost him. On the flip side of the coin, McCaffrey, obviously the stud. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He was the running back 2 on the week. Sean Tucker was actually the running back 1, although I don't think he got started. Jameson Williams was the wide receiver 5, so he would have been a good play to throw in. Wouldn't have necessarily narrowed the gap, but like I said before, sure couldn't have made things worse. I think having 2 people under 2 points in major skill set positions, that's just not going to go super well. Speaking of not going super well, 2 teams who went under their predicted, but one person went just under, and he's in the playoffs right now, and one person didn't even get close, and he's not in the playoffs right now. I think we can see how that rolls, and when we get to the standings, we'll see how close it actually is. I probably could have used this one if I wanted to try and make a run. I don't have too many more weeks left to do it, but throwing stones was kicking my bones. I don't really like the way that kind of came across, but you know what I mean. Michael versus Michael here, and he took it. Could end up being a pivotal one as he's still in the top 5. How he did so, Nico was the wide receiver 4. If we keep looking down, he had the quarterback 4 as well. He did have another wide receiver ring the bell, but unfortunately they were down here for him. That was a wide receiver 2, so this could have been even fugglier if he really would have put out the top lineup. I just didn't have a whole lot step up. My wide receivers were poop emoji at best. And Travion Henderson, and when Travion Henderson is your lead guy and it's not even close, he was the running back 3. That's just where I am as a franchise right now, just in case you were curious. Big win for you, big loss for me, and we'll have one more matchup, and then we'll get to the standings to see just how key that was. And that one more matchup is obviously key. Look at the one difference between the top and the bottom of the playoffs right now. So obviously this had a huge swing. Andrew's back in the #1 spot, and it's not for Lamar Jackson. That was the worst game he'd have. Even Derrick Henry, that was a great one. Didn't crack the top 5. Kittle did, though. He was the tight end 2. We had the defense 2 in Cleveland as well, and that was kind of enough. He did have some points on the bench, but not as many points as Jim had. I don't know if that really makes the difference here, though. Obviously, having someone come in for Dallas Goedert would have been nice, but no one going off, and that's kind of what this week came down to. JSN had an off week for him, which was still his top scoring person, but you really just needed that one guy to have like a top 2, top 3, and this would have been a fight. Let's go to the standings, though, and just see how this helps balance things out. Taking a look at the table, we do have one person who's pretty much, I would say, out of it, having to go on a win streak and score a lot of points. So Thielen Breezy, you might be relegated down here to that bottom 4. There might be some more people joining after this week, though. I mean, if you look at it, we are a key game behind, but points scored, Jake and I and Motor City dudes. Obviously, if we get in some ties, we could be trouble. Right here, a tie from 3 to 6 and a tie for top 2. So I can't say it in any other ways, but obviously everything matters. Who you play, how much you score. So looking at this matchup, it's kind of an interesting breakdown. We got a couple teams in the playoffs right now, but a lot of it seems to be a team out of it and a team in it. And obviously, we know the motivations there. So week 12, we don't get a whole lot closer than this, especially with all the ties. Not surprisingly, we had a couple of deals. Now, one could be impactful. Some late round drafts, some players that could be considered to be kept, maybe played this year. Let's see. But then we had, I would say, the blockbuster. I know I was involved in one that also could be considered, but yowzers, I didn't see this one coming. Just after playing each other, they went after it, changing running backs. One, younger, could be something special in the future. One we know is something special right now, and a bunch of draft picks that are going to make next year super interesting. So it's always better when there's a few trades in the water. Trade deadline's going to be coming and going here, though, so we've already lost our chances. But don't worry, there are some off-season options we can get to once this season closes down. I don't think week 12 is going to solve all our problems. It's going to make some more complicated. We might have 1 or 2 more teams know exactly where they're going to go. I don't think we're going to have any outright clinchers on those top 2 spots until the end, but I could be totally wrong. They might make a run for it. If you're thinking about winning 3 in a row, now's the time to get started, or maybe even more so for some who are already walking in on a win streak. So I've said it all before, and again, going to come down to the last couple weeks, so make your decisions wisely, and best of luck, everybody.